Please call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hold on, Lex. Say it louder. Say it again.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag, States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu? Here. Mr. Gorbett?
Here.
Ms. Laird? Here. Mr. Price?
I'm sorry. Everybody's going to have to speak up. I'm way here in no man's land. I can't hear a single thing.
Can you hear us out there? Okay.
Mr. Price?
We're working on it.
Here.
Mr. Ray?
Here.
Let's do a sound check, folks, just so we can make sure. There's nothing worse than not being heard, right? So, Mr. Price, could you just do sound check your mics and we'll see if everybody's okay, can hear you?
Sure. How's everybody doing tonight?
There we go. Mrs. Ray? You check your mic, please.
Speak in your mic.
Hello?
Why don't you scoot it right up to your mouth, Vi? We're going to get all over that thing tonight.
There you go.
Good evening, everyone.
There we go. Miss Laird?
Good evening.
Hello there, everybody.
Good evening.
And here's mine. All right.
Good evening.
A little closer, maybe. Atta girl, Megan.
Good evening.
Atta girl. Don't be shy.
Hello.
Hello.
All
Hola.
right. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to have our recommendations of the superintendent.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gorbetz, and thank you, everyone, for coming. You know, as I've been preparing for this, the one thing that keeps flooding over me is one thing that we have in common. We want our kids in school. So I just want to think just right now that we all have that in common. And that's a big, broad umbrella. And I know I'm not going to lose sight of that this evening. We want our students in school. Thank you for coming. We have with us this evening, sort of the plan tonight is, as you see on the agenda, the recommendations from the superintendent. So I'm going to kind of have the first little bit of this, and then it will be turned over to you. Part of my purpose this evening is to try to show why I'm going to make the recommendation I'm going to make. And to do that, I've got a few guests and some information to share. So that is my plan this evening. The board is going to consider a policy this evening. I just want to take a moment to explain kind of what that actually means. The board sets policy for the district. Those policies then guide what I am allowed to do as the person in charge of the day-to-day operations. So the policy this evening is not a we're going to mask policy. It's a policy that grants me the authority to make that decision if I think it's necessary. I'm going to make that recommendation tonight so everyone can hear what I'm thinking. So there's no secrets. That way the board knows exactly what I'm thinking is appropriate and what I believe is the right thing to do, and I'm going to lay out the reasons why. Then, when I'm done, it'll be your turn to say why you think it should be one way or another, and we'll do that one at a time at the podium. Then, when everyone has had their time, the board will vote and make a decision, simply on the policy which grants me the authority to make the decision. So that's kind of the layout of the evening. I have with me, actually as two guests of mine, two doctors who we've had kind of conferences with over the last 18 months as we've been dealing with this. And they are going to share some of the information that they have and kind of what they are seeing in their respective worlds. Also, I know I see a few faces that were at the last meeting. There were some questions that came up, and we thought, well, let's get some answers. Let's find out kind of what the bottom line is on some of these things. So that's our attempt this evening, is to address those things that came up last night. Now, this is my portion to the board. So right now, I am presenting to the board the same way you'll present to the board in a few moments. So I'm presenting to the board. These are my guests. They are also presenting to the board. So that is the direct line of communication. Okay? So first of all, we're going to introduce Dr. Adesima Arevalo.
That's right.
Doctor, if you would, maybe as you introduce yourself, kind of tell you what you do in town, and everybody knows kind of your role and your expertise, and then proceed. Thank you.
Good evening. Some of you know me. Peruvian physician, landed in Peru, in United States, 23 years ago, but in Fremont 15 years ago. Such a beautiful community. We feel that Fremont is home. I do pediatrics and infectious disease. We live for you. That's what we do at work. And I have some of my nurses tonight here too. We're thinking about you, the children, every single day, and we want the community healthy. So I guess before I start, we pledge to our flag, and we said, indivisible and justice for all. That's a beautiful way to start our evening, because we are so divided. I'm not here to convince you on what you believe. I'm here to share my experience as a provider in this community. If you have a position about vaccine, I'm not going to try to convince you to vaccinate or not if you already made your mind. This is a learning experience, and we all need to be humble. Seriously, this started 18 months ago. This COVID virus bought a ticket 18 months ago, and for the first time we identify on this planet, but was actually brewing somewhere, and we didn't know. So allow us to make mistakes, and we have made mistakes. At all levels, we have made mistakes because we're all learning from zero, from different areas that we practice or we perform. We start with the same basic knowledge. We didn't know what actually hit us 18 months ago. But during these 18 months, the healthcare providers in every single place in this world has really looking for the lives of every single human being that we take care of. We're not making decisions based on misinformation. I'm here to share the experience that we're living at work every single day. And it's I try to consolidate on the following slides that I'm not going to be able to show you, but I will try to walk you through those. So this pandemic, this is the worst pandemic we had since 1918. I actually tried to think about what really happened with flu when flu arrived 103 years ago. It's probably the same thing happened. Everybody confused, we didn't know what to do, and pretty much everybody started making decisions, and people were deciding for getting on isolation, quarantine, things that we actually tried to use, and we have learned that they are working now. So since 1918, last year, 2020, we have the COVID-19 virus, but this coronavirus has been on this planet since probably 1960 when we identified some strains. But the COVID-19 is from last year. The Delta variant that you all heard, you are actually familiar with, it's really spreading very fast. We know that. It's actually the most predominant variant in the country right now. And you're going to learn that over the next months, we're going to have all the alphabet, the Greek alphabet, alpha, beta, gamma, sigma, whatever letter we want to put it. So now we have the delta that is spreading really fast. And actually, that happened, the peak we're having around July, when the children were in summer, and then September came for school. So has spread really fast. We have learned that quarantine works, and school closure last year that actually really hit very, very hard to our children. I do pediatrics. I do infectious disease. I see adolescents in my office. I see all age groups. One thing that I have learned, and I'm totally convinced, that our children need to be in school. The American Academy of Pediatrics put a statement already. Children need to be in school. We have increased the number of mental health issues to a level that we have not seen before. Depression, anxiety, suicide. And that's real. And guess what? When they come and see us, waiting lists, 3-4 months, my nurses know we cannot do anything. I mean, we're trying to counsel our school. We try to provide support to these children, and we cannot. And sadly, some of them don't do well. Most of them, they don't do well. So children need to be in school. So I talk to colleagues at Toledo Children's, and I work with Dr. Bruce Barnett. Some of you may know because some of your children I have referred to him. He's a pediatric pulmonologist at Toledo Children's. He's the vice president of medical affairs. He's the director of cystic fibrosis. And he actually also had been sharing information and shared for tonight's presentation some of the data from Toledo Children's. The inpatient volumes that we're seeing in pediatrics are at the winter levels. For us, for all of us during winter, we know that I have to see 35, 40 patients a day in the office, that I have to see 5, 10 admissions, but now, not in September. So that's what we're doing now. So the number of respiratory illnesses, upper respiratory infections, bronchitis, otitis, bronchiolitis, rhinitis, pneumonias, the numbers are outrageous. The emergency departments, the urgent cares, our offices, we cannot keep up. We cannot. I had to tell my nurses a week ago, I said, sorry, that's all what I could do today. I cannot. Tell them urgent care. Dr. Evalo, they're saying urgent care is booked 3-4 days. Gosh, and this is a 6-month-old. Who is going to take care of the 6-month-old at home? This is a 2-year-old. I follow a principle. Less than 2 years of age, you bring them here because they don't know how to tell us what is bothering them. I'm the one who has to try to understand what's going on with them so that I could actually medicate them and see what's the best treatment. So in the office, really the practice was less than 2 you bring, but now I cannot even do that. So I'm totally, in my practice, at our practice here in pediatrics, we're overbooked. Overbooking 3-4 per appointment, and that's it. And the other part are being home. We're trying video visits, we try our best, but we cannot actually be able to keep up. So looking back, the rate of COVID, it went up from 3% 8 weeks ago to 8.4 4 weeks ago, and now around 12.7%. So these numbers may not mean too much for you, but when you have hundreds sick, thousands sick, these numbers start piling up. So piling up, we have this number of providers in town. I cannot tell you exactly the number, Mary, you may know. Let's say 10, but that's it. We're not able to get doctors, new doctors in this town. We're not able to keep up with the number of nurses that we have working, even at our hospital. So the health department has sent numbers today. They share numbers. And in the last 3 weeks, Sandusky County had a total of 688 COVID patients. And the age group, the age group that was mostly affected was up to the children from 0 to 19 years of age. So that's real. These are numbers that I'm sharing, are public, we all have access to. So school districts actually share numbers with the health department, and they have compared what happened between 2020, 2021 school year, and now the beginning, just the first 3 weeks of school, September 2021. Last year, school, during the whole year, students they quarantine around 800 students and 88 staff members. This year, in the first 3-4 weeks, 466 students were quarantined, 3 staff members quarantined. The COVID-19 cases nationally have increased to 240% in children, and in Ohio, close to 2,000%. So it's real. I just came from work. I mean, it's every day. Our long hours are between 14, 16, 18 hours a day. Our children's hospitals are totally booked. It has happened. They get to the ER. We admit what we can here at Memorial Hospital in Fremont. What we cannot, we said we have to transfer. But our children's hospitals are at near total capacity. And this is supposed to be the slow season. That's an alarm for me, red flag for me. If this is now, I don't know what we're gonna do in November, December, January, when actually are the worst winter months for us in the office. Not for us, it's because we are not able to service everybody that we need and they are looking for. So right now we have RSV, enterovirus that actually are the more prevalent viruses and are present now. So without counting influenza. We don't have the flu yet. I don't know what's going to happen. We know what really we have discussed in the past. Over these 18 months, we have learned, and CDC also has put this: keep washing your hands, wearing a mask, and distancing, social distancing. Those are the 3 things that we were trying during these 18 months. So until we got the vaccine. So I'm totally convinced one thing, and this is based not only on science, it's also based on experience, and it's actually being from Peru. I'm actually the result of 2 cultures. My Peruvian culture, my country, where I see what's going on, and I'm going to tell you in a few minutes what's going on there. But also, I'm a result of living here. Such a beautiful country where we have access to technology, we have access to equipment, we have access to what the world is crying for. Vaccine. So prevention of COVID, I know this, is vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. The rest of the world is actually crying for the vaccine. My town was wiped out. The death rate in my town, where we don't have access to the vaccine, is around 50%. I have lost probably close to half of our people of my age. I'm actually in the middle of my, I don't know if my middle of my life, hopefully. But anyway, so, and we don't have masks. People are wearing whatever they do have access to, clothes and things. So initially in this COVID pandemic, we thought, oh, children are not affected as bad as adults. This is mostly for adults. And that's what we were seeing last year. But now with everything, we truly have seen the shift. We have seen the shift, and we have seen sicker people at younger age, and our children are getting sicker than last year. The ones that are getting affected, hardly affected by COVID, which actually is not the vast majority. But from every 500, if the one will be your child, I think you will do everything. We will do everything to prevent that. I'm convinced of that. So the mask has been used since 1890s by surgeons in Germany. During the COVID-19, the flu pandemic, 1918, even the baseball teams were using the mask. And I have pictures for some of you that are interested in looking at that. So when you do some research on websites that are reliable based on medicine and science research done, which is PubMed, you will find thousands of articles that show the safety and efficacy of the mask, of different masks, because it's a barrier. It's a barrier. And I try to, and I share with some parents here, I share this analogy because they bring toddlers to me. They're like walking around in the office. And I said, is your child potty trained? And no, not yet, so we're in pull-outs. So we're putting pull-outs on these children, on our children, because we want the pee to be contained in one area. So that's what pretty much basically the mask does. The droplets get contained there. I mean, it's not gonna be perfect. Nobody's gonna tell me that this is perfect 100%. I'm actually so used to this now. For 18 months in indoor settings, we're gonna wear a mask. I mean, because now the levels are getting higher, so we're wearing a mask all day at work and indoor settings. So there's some myth, the mask causes infections, increase your risk of bacterial and fungal infections. Seriously, in healthcare, we probably wouldn't even be able to be working because we wear this every single day. And we were N95, actually. So the increased risk of your infections, no. Decrease your immunity, we have not seen that. Actually, it's a barrier. Decreased chances of any droplets infected with any virus that we have in the saliva will go out. And we're just asking now for COVID. We learned this during this COVID pandemic. Information that actually has been shared since 1918. That's what people actually did. So that increase your carbon dioxide level and decrease your oxygen. That's not true. I mean, these things we wear when you need to blow your nose, you clean your nose, but we have not seen any evidence that really affecting our health. The mask is strongly recommended by different medical associations. We have the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Family Medicine, the American College of OBGYNs, all the societies. I have all the names here that I could share with you. All the societies, medical societies that have really shared that. But we're doing this for two reasons. I'm here for two reasons. One is that I want the children in school. Really, I want them in school, because if we're going to continue taking them out, quarantine. I have also parents that can't even cry and tell me I cannot go to work because my child was quarantined. I don't have a daycare. I have to miss work. And they struggle financially. So those are the consequences that we're seeing. So to keep everybody in school, I think it's really important to decrease the transmission. And the other reason why I'm here is for my colleagues and everybody that I work with, to make sure we give opportunity to every human being that we serve at the hospital and our units, so that we actually give options. It's really sad when you don't have beds and you even have to say, I'm sorry, we don't have beds. And that's what I'm here for. I really thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Thank you for giving importance to this moment, but help us to make sure Fremont is safe and our children are back in school. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Revelo. Dr. Bauer, thank you.
All right. Well, I'm Dr. Bauer, Mary Bauer. I've been in town 22 years as a family physician. I believe many of you heard what I had to say last week at the school board meeting, and you asked me to come back with more facts to back up my comments. So I really don't want to rehash what I had to say last week. I think Dr. Arevalo did a fabulous job of explaining what we're all going through, and there's no need to go through that again. I just want to present you with some data with some questions that were asked last week. So first of all, last week there were a lot of questions about cloth masks, and are cloth masks, show me proof that cloth masks work. So the Journal of American Medical Association, it's the mainstream journal for all doctors, in February released a study showing that cloth masks reduce the risk of infection of COVID-19, not other respiratory things, specifically COVID-19, when worn by all participants in a setting. So that's pretty remarkable, right? 51%. I think we should be happy with that. Again, as Dr. Revelo mentioned, nothing is going to be perfect. We just need to just slow things down here. Keep kids in school. We're not going for perfect. We're going for better. So then there was also questions about, well, show me that mask requirements really work in schools. So that district information is really difficult to obtain. It's not data that I have access to. So I started looking at states that had mask requirements in school versus states that don't have mask requirements, specifically Ohio. And a child's risk of having gotten COVID in the past few weeks in Ohio is 6 times that a child who lives in Massachusetts. Now, there's probably multiple factors involved. There's higher vaccination rates. Their parents may wear masks a little better. There may be an expectation for masks within the community more. But regardless, it shows to me that masks and vaccines work to reduce infection in children. The last study that I want to present to you, which is the most exciting study to me, is the one that was released by the University of Cincinnati just this week. We are going to be getting so much good data in the next couple months, and I promise we are going to be so much smarter on an exponential basis this next year. But this study was released just this week. Even the News Messenger ran an article about it today. They looked at several districts within Hamilton County, that's where the University of Cincinnati is, and they compared the school districts that had mask mandates to those that did not have mask mandates. And this is what they found. The rate of students getting diagnosed with COVID-19 was 78% higher in partially masked schools versus universally masked schools. They also found that schools with partial masking had an increase of 60% risk or need for quarantining. And the ratio of quarantining for COVID-19 cases was 30% higher in partially masked schools. Even the researchers themselves were floored by the difference the masks made. So I'm hoping that this data helps you. Certainly, if there is other data that you'd be interested in, I would be happy to research it. Oh, I do have one other thing that I found this week. States with mask mandates had significant lower number of school closures and lower PICU bed occupancy. So that is the data I'm presenting you to this week. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. You're welcome to go. I appreciate your time very much.
Thank you.
I know you've worked long days. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a letter from the Sandusky County Public Health Department. This is from Bethany Brown. She said, over the past 18 months, the Sandusky County Public Health Department has partnered with the Fremont City School District. I'm sorry, this is addressed to the school board members. With your school district and administration regarding the combined response to COVID-19 within your schools. We provided the most up-to-date information and ensured that your guidance and recommendations to make informed, educated decisions for the safety of your administration, staff, and students. Below are some numbers of students and staff who were affected in your school district during last year compared to the beginning of the school this year. Dr. Revelo shared some of that. I'm going to get back to some of that in a minute. Then she's got a page of data. And then she continues on that in August through September of 2020, so last year, there were 29 cases between years 3 years and 18 of age. This year, between August and September, 237. So in the same range, 29 last year, 237 this year. From mid-August to mid-September of 2021, there were 29,000 Ohio school-aged kids ages 5 to 17 confirmed with probable cases of COVID. Cases among children have increased 240% nationally. I won't read all of it, but there's just one other thing. In Ohio, we've seen a 2,000% increase in cases in children. COVID cases are increasing at nearly double the rate among school-age kids compared to the rest of the population. The number of cases we're seeing now among children is the highest we have seen at any point during the pandemic. We provided the school board and Ohio Department of Health's K-12 guidance and recommended that all school districts follow these recommendations. They include vaccination of all eligible persons, physical distancing, wearing of masks by all persons in public indoor settings, including schools, and the isolation of quarantine of persons with COVID-19 infections. Sincerely, Bethany Brown. I just want to share that as sort of a part of the doctor's presentation as well. Now, I'd like to kind of move on to conditions on the ground. Now, this is my world now. We kind of let the doctors talk, we let the health department talk. I just want to explain to you what we're facing in Fremont City schools. You may not have caught it, but Dr. Revelo mentioned that in the first 3 weeks of school last year, we had 2 positive cases of students, 2. In the first 3 weeks so far this year, 85 positive cases, identified, tested, confirmed 85 cases. Last year, during 9 months of school, all of last year, 2021, we quarantined over 800 people. This year, so far in 3 weeks, 466 have been quarantined. So we've reached over half in 3 weeks what took us a year to do last year. The numbers this year so far, our first week of school, we had 6 positive cases. Now, these aren't quarantine numbers. These are positive COVID cases. We had 6. The second week of school, we had 20. The third week of school, we had 35. Monday and Tuesday of this week, we already have 24. That pattern is breaking the week's record previous by 15 students every week. It's really going up. In the anecdotal department, I know, team, that this is, there's a lot of things we can say, and you can find research to back up whatever. But, this isn't scientific, but I talked to Eugene Sanders. Eugene Sanders is the superintendent of Sandusky City Schools. They started their district just like we did. We tried it. No mask, well, just recommended masks. In his first week, which was last week, he cut his quarantine numbers in half using masks. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing a crisis in the district in about every area you can imagine. This morning, we had to pull a custodian out of their position in one of the buildings because they are bus driver certified. Because this morning, as we've done for about 2.5 solid weeks, everyone that can drive a bus in this district is, including my transportation manager, whose job it is to manage the bus garage. His job is not a bus driver. There's been 1 day since the beginning of school that he hasn't driven a bus. As a matter of fact, I was on schedule to drive the bus last Thursday, but couldn't make it because I had another obligation. We are at a crisis with our school bus drivers. I have several cases there of COVID. Yesterday, I had 14 unfilled teacher positions. 14. That's 14 classrooms without an adult in the room. No one. So what we're doing is scrambling. Principals are covering. Directors are covering. That week the school was down in here in the middle school, we claimed a few middle school teachers, even though they're trying to work with their kids virtually, to cover classrooms in K-5 buildings just to have an adult in the room. My principals tell me they've got lots of other things to do, but they have been doing nothing, I mean nothing, but either teaching or contact tracing, which is the thing you do when you have to look and see who's been exposed. That's all they do. It even gets into our cafeteria. You know, traditionally, we've been able to go 30 days for a menu. The disruption in the food chain, I'm sorry, the supply chain, not the food chain, thankfully. The food chain is good. The supply chain is not so hot. We can't go but a week out. So by Wednesday and Thursday, we find out what we can get. We order it. And then we only get half of what we order. It's coming that we will have to take a credit card to Walmart, Hasselbach, Roots Chicken to get food for our cafeterias. Now, that isn't bad. I know we want to buy local, but it's expensive. And nothing against those places, but it's pales comparison to our subsidized meals that we get through the programs that we use all the time. But those sources are in trouble. I had to shut the middle school down a week ago. A very difficult decision. And I tried to explain to a lot of people who I've talked to what that was all about. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not a magic number. I don't have like a 20% or 18%. There's not like, here's this number. What I told my principals was, as soon as you cannot manage, as soon as you feel like the wheels are coming off and you can no longer function, let me know. Well, I got a call 2 weeks ago Friday from the administrators in this building saying, we can't do it. I can't keep up. If you imagine, as soon as a child is positive, the contact tracing begins. We march down the hall with a 6-foot stick, start going classroom to classroom. Who's been here? Who's been there? Who were you by? Was that person masked, not masked? Were they vaccinated, not vaccinated? It chews up a tremendous amount of time. Every child is wiping out about 20 other kids in the quarantine rules. I don't make the quarantine rules. I follow them. And I'm not sure I even agree with them sometimes. I'm not saying anything about justifying them. They are what they are. I have to follow them. And we're taking out really about 20 kids per positive case. I don't know if we can keep functioning. I guess my point of all of that is we're limping along, but I feel like a prize fighter on the ropes. I don't know how long we can maintain what we're doing with the patterns that we're seeing with the adults and with the students. So when I close the middle school down, it's because we just can't manage it. It's too much and keep the wheels on. And you can imagine the disruption in classroom when all we're doing is classroom to classroom, trying to find who was sitting by whom. It's not an educational environment. It's not. I don't like virtual, hate it. But there is a tipping point when the disruption in seated learning is so great that it's not any better than virtual. I want students in the building. I want to talk to you just a second about those quarantine rules. I talk about quarantine students. That 3-foot and 6-foot rule is really, really serious, and that's sort of where we're getting killed. A child that is vaccinated or masked, actually vaccinated, they won't be quarantined as long as they don't show symptoms. They can keep coming. So I know I have some parents who've asked, had to clarify that with me, and I said, yes, if they're vaccinated, they don't get quarantined unless they show symptoms. We have to monitor the symptoms. We ask them to mask until we check out those symptoms. But a vaccinated child will not get quarantined. If a child is masked, they can be 15 minutes within 3 feet of someone. I'm sorry, just up to 3 feet, 3 feet or greater, if they're masked. If they are unmasked and unvaccinated, that's 6 feet. You can imagine we've got full classrooms now. 6 feet around my chair, Megan goes, and so does Mrs. Spiritu. They're out if none of us are masked. If we're masked, this is probably close. We might make it, probably 3 feet, right? She's good. Someone asked me, what will be the impact of masking? Well, I think it's pretty clear. My nurses have told me, my school nurses have told me, they believe we would have half the numbers of quarantine if everyone was masked. That's not trickery. That's not sneaking up on anybody. That's not trying to manipulate data. It's basically 3 feet versus 6 feet. Twice or half, depending on how you look at it. So I believe those quarantine numbers will be cut in half if we are masked up. I have a note from my school nurses. You may know some of them. This is one of the most dutiful group of women I've ever known in my entire life. They sent me a 3-page letter. I'm not going to read all of it. I am going to read a couple things. This is my school nurses. We look at times 15 minutes or more with a positive student, cumulative minutes, so short bus rides can add up to when the exposure occurred over several days. We need to find out who's within the 3 feet, the 3 to 6 feet. Are they vaccinated? Were they wearing a mask? The next step is getting these kids home. They've been directly exposed to someone positive for COVID, so every minute they sit in class is a risk for other students. We have to get a hold of the parents. They say, I'm sorry, your child has been directly exposed to someone at school that has COVID. No one wants that phone call. No one. We call mom, we call dad, we leave voicemails. Sometimes we can't even get a hold of anyone and have to bring in our social workers to try to get those students home. Every student gets sent home with paperwork with information for parents and a letter from the health department. This information needs to be reviewed, what to do, what not to do, what symptoms to watch for. It goes on and on. You can imagine you do that 20 or 30 times a day, whoosh, that's a mess. It's completely unmanageable. In bold type towards the end of the letter, they say, Mr. Detweiler, we need to reenact a mask mandate. Those are my school nurses. I'm almost done. I'm going to share with you now a few quotes from the Children's Hospital. I was invited to a Zoom meeting last week from the High Department of Education geared towards all superintendents in the state. On the Zoom call were 6 representatives from the children's hospitals in the state of Ohio. The first one, Dr. Revelo mentioned, is the EB Children's Hospital, which is part of ProMedica in Toledo. They were in an all EMS bypass last week. Then she explained all EMS bypass means is every hospital in Lucas County was full. If you had a heart attack and lived next door to one of the Lucas County hospitals, you can't go there. You've got to go out of the county to find a place to be. Every hospital in Lucas County was in a bypass EMS situation because they have no room. That was at the Children's Hospital. Children's Hospital. Dr. Marlene Miller from the University Health Center, Rainbow Children's, 240% increase in the positivity rate. ERs is setting records. It's mostly COVID. Please, superintendents, mask up. Robert McGregor from Akron Children's, their ICU is full. They have 1,000 students that, children that are sick. Of the ones that they've had over the last few months, 1,000 students, 23, I'm going to say that again, 1,000 students that have had COVID, 23 of them were from unmasked schools. The schools that were masked, from masked schools, I said that improperly, I'm sorry, went around. 23 of the 1,000 were from masked schools. Justin Morse, Nationwide Children's Hospital. We're seeing unnecessary death in the last two. Dr. Adam Mesoff, Dayton Children's. We have no beds for kids, so we're moving them into the ER. Pat Manning from Cincinnati Children's. Letting kids get sick in order to get past this isn't working. Those are the comments that I heard in a plea from the children's hospitals directors in this state to the state superintendents. I'm now going to go over my plan. I got more here that I'm not going to bore you with. Here's my plan, ladies and gentlemen. Please listen carefully. I've joked this whole last year and a half that I have become a master at pleasing no one, because I've tried to find a spot somewhere in the middle where everyone can at least have a piece of it. I love my community. It breaks my heart that we're this divided. Breaks my heart. Here's my plan. I would like to try a 3-week temporary mask mandate. 3 weeks. October 15th, starting Monday, if the board gives me the authority in a few minutes to do that. 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, I will reevaluate. I will work with the health department. I'll work with the doctors. I'll listen to you. We will keep the conversation going. 3 weeks. Because in that meeting with these children's hospitals, they asked for a month. Right down the line, they said, superintendents, please give us 1 month to get this thing righted. Well, that was a week ago. So I'm proposing 3 weeks at the request of those directors of those children's hospitals, starting Monday. It is an indoor mandate only, no mask at recess. I'm also going to allow my phys ed teachers to take those masks off during physical activity. I've heard that a lot, and I think you're right. It's silly. Why are we asking these kids to run with a mask on? Now, I have to work with my phys ed teachers and make sure that they're doing it. But if you're 6 feet apart and you're doing physical activity in the gym, masks are off. All outside activities, masks are off. Classroom setting, masks are on. We'll continue with extracurriculars, like I said, and masks for indoor events. I will ask attendees who come to a volleyball game to wear a mask. A doctor's note will be required for any exemptions. That is no different. That has been our policy from the start. Refusal to wear a mask will be treated as low-level insubordination, just like running in the hall. It's not the end of the world, but it has to escalate. We will deal with it. Policy without any teeth is no policy at all. I know that isn't what some people want to hear, but it's useless if we don't have something there. This is for all persons regardless of vaccination status or age. Adults, children, vaccinated, unvaccinated, everyone. The quarantine rules inside of 3 feet will still apply. So I'm not saying we're going to have 0 quarantines. If I'm sitting this close to Megan in class, and I'm come positive, even though we're masked, we're within 3 feet, those quarantine rules will still apply. So don't hear that I'm saying no quarantine. I'm not saying that. Bus masking will continue regardless unless the federal rules change. Religious exemptions have not been upheld in court, so those would have to be sincere and established practices. The pattern on that has been, as an example, the Amish. It's an established pathway there, so that would be granted. But it can't be, well, I just don't think it's what we should be able to do. That will not hold. That is my recommendation. I also, ladies and gentlemen, I'll turn it back then to the board and we'll start hearing from you. I anticipate some changes very quickly. Word on the street is there's going to be a vaccine by Halloween. Now, if you remember back in January, we kept hearing 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, all of a sudden, boom, there it was. I'm hoping it's the same. I promise you, with all of you as witnesses, the instant things change, I will change. For example, if that vaccination for children from 12 and down is happening, I'll relook at this. The other thing I anticipate happening is the quarantine changes. There's some research happening right now where they're looking at maybe that quarantine is a little bit overstepped. Maybe there's a way to test every day, right? If you're in quarantine, if you're negative, you come to school. I'm all about that. If that happens, once again, we'll relook at the masking. But I see these things coming. So right now, my proposal is 3 weeks, masked, and then we'll go from there. Now, also in front of my creator and yours, we don't know in 3 weeks things will be any different. There's a very real possibility we'll have to continue. But I promise you, my integrity on the line, it will be an honest look at what masks are doing for us and if we can get these masks off. I told the board last summer that there are 3 levels of decision making. There's the federal government, the state government, right? There's local government schools, that's me. Then there's families. I told them this summer that what we want is the family level decision. It's what I want, what I believe in my heart. But I do believe also in my heart that there's a time for the public good that bumps up into that other level. We do it all the time. I had to obey some speed laws to get here. So that is my proposal. That is my proposal to the board. What I'd like to do now is maybe take some questions from the board, and then we'll turn it over to the community. Ladies and gentlemen, any questions or clarification on my plan?
I think you stated it very clearly, Mr. Detweiler.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mr. Gorbitz, I yield. I need the lists of sign-up sheets. Are those out there?
Right behind you.
Thank you. I have 2 sheets, Mr. Gorbitz, and my thought was to alternate back and forth so we have different people coming to the board whenever you're ready.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to extend our 30-minute time limit to 1 hour.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Laird,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Espiritu. Are there any comments, concerns regarding the roll call, please?
Mrs. Laird?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu? Yes. Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbitz?
Yes. So we have 1 hour. The Fremont City School District citizen recognized by the chair may speak on any issue during the recognition of visitors and hearing of the public sessions, but the chair may limit remarks pursuant to the debate regulations of Robert's Rules of Order and Fremont City School District policy. So we would ask that you limit your statement to 5 minutes. And we have 1 hour for the topic. I would ask the audience, when somebody is speaking, to be respectful, be attentive. Do not ask that person questions. Show the same respect and dignity that we showed our speakers tonight up here. Okay, I think we're ready.
Thank you. Number 1 on the list is Matthew Moose, M-O-U-S. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll be brief. Can everyone hear me all right?
Can you hear him out there? Okay.
Okay, I stand tonight. I represent two LUTZ students. I'm a parent of two LUTZ students. I'm also an employee of Firelands Regional Medical Center in Sandusky, Ohio. I sit on the emergency command team, and we've been operating at an emergency level since last March. Right now, we have 14 COVID cases in my ICU. I have 16 ICU beds. My nurses are tired. We're having trouble staffing our nursing floors, and it only seems to be getting worse. We can correlate this change to about the time Sandusky started their schools. So at about the same time, we had 2 COVID patients. We got as high as 31. Right now, the ICU, we're pretty full. The situation doesn't look like it's going to get any better. I feel like as a community in whole, we got to come together, reduce the spread of disease the best we can. I think masking in school will help do that. That's basically it. I think it's the right move. If we can reduce the disease, I might be able to give our nurses a break, and we might be able to get a hold of this thing. But right now, at least in the Erie County area, at my hospital, we're living it every day. It looks terrible. So any help we can get from any community is what we're pushing for. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
All right, next, Josie Setzler.
Good evening, everyone. I'm reading a letter from Brittany Gugesberg in which she compiled brief messages from 6 high-risk families, including her own. Brittany's son, Landon, is a preschooler at Otis. His father, Brittany's boyfriend, Eric, was diagnosed with advanced heart failure and cardiomyopathy in 2018. Last year alone, Eric was hospitalized 8 times and went into cardiac arrest twice. He was given an LVAD to help pump his blood efficiently since his heart was working at less than 8%. He was placed on the heart transplant list 1 year ago. This year, he battled a rare strep infection that required him to continue IV treatment from home for 2 months. A COVID infection could ruin his chances of receiving a heart if he is infected when one becomes available. It could also kill him. Katie Riedmeyer has a son named Aaron that is a student at Lutz. Aaron has a baby sister named Anna. Anna was born with a birth defect called choanal atresia, which is essentially a blocked nasal passage. Specialists say that COVID would be devastating for her since she is already working so much harder to breathe. She was diagnosed recently with binder syndrome as well, which will require surgery. After 8 days in school, her brother Aaron was exposed by someone he sat next to at lunch. His mother was not notified to have him quarantined until Monday. He had been around his baby sister all weekend. Luckily, the test came back negative. Erin Smith is the mother of Harper, who attends Otis. Erin has been vaccinated with 3 doses due to having Crohn's disease, a chronic health condition which requires her to take medication that compromises her immune system. Unfortunately, she remains at risk, and her husband and children must take further precautions. Her healthcare team has limited her activities since the beginning, which has limited her children's activities as well. As a family, they just want to have as normal a year as possible. Next, Ashley Reynolds is the mother of Noah and Gage, who attend the middle school, and Aiden, who attends Otis. Her fiancé is Bradley Cook. In 2019, Bradley became very sick and was diagnosed with advanced heart failure and cardiomyopathy. Soon after, Bradley began having strokes. He was placed on a transplant list. On March 14th, 2020, Bradley received the call he had been waiting for. A heart was available. Unfortunately, this was right when the pandemic hit. Bradley had to face this surgery alone and did not see his family for 6 weeks. He is now on medications that suppress his immune system so that his body will not reject his new heart. If rejection occurs, he will have to go through this painful process again, or he could lose his life. Amy Krylik is the mother of Olivia, a 7th grader at the middle school. Amy is a multiple sclerosis sufferer. MS is a neurological condition that is treated with immunosuppressive medications. Infections of any kind may worsen symptoms or provoke new symptoms. For Amy, a fever can create a spike in MS activity or even more MRI lesions. COVID-19 is an infection that makes an MS relapse more likely to occur, making it difficult to walk or move at all. Olivia, who is vaccinated, has been wearing her mask without being mandated to do so because she believes in keeping you, her family, and herself safe. Our last family is that of Heather Ross. Heather is the mother of Joshua, a student at Ross, and Jay, a student at the middle school. Heather is another sufferer of multiple sclerosis, and her entire family has been vaccinated. Jay, her middle schooler, was sick the entire week that the middle school was closed. He tested negative for COVID all week. Then 2 days ago, her husband got tested and was positive, and he doesn't know where he may have been exposed. Her boys have gotten exposure letters every day while they have been in school. This has been a complete nightmare for Heather and her family. If masking had been implemented, this may have been avoided. Brittany and the other moms conclude with this plea. This is about life and death for some of us.
Ma'am, your time is up.
They ask for your yes vote this evening.
I would like to mention that those of you who did speak last week, your comments are on the record. So we would ask that anybody new this week that would like to speak would get preference.
Mr. Gorbez, I had another thought, and also, with your permission, I would go maybe from the top of the list to the bottom, just so that the early birds don't get all the worms, so to speak. Is that okay? So I'll go top to bottom on each list, so everyone came late and early would have a chance. So bottom of the first list, Alexandra Evans.
Hello. First of all, thank you for doing what you're doing. I wouldn't want to be in your seat. So, Mr. Detweiler, I totally agree with what you said and your statistics. I have no reason to believe that you're making up numbers. Neither do I have reason to believe that any of the doctors that spoke have made anything up, or that for whatever reason that we would not be able to think that that is untrue. I have a daughter in 10th grade. We have been through the pandemic last year as a family. It frankly was not that much fun. And I think anybody who has a kid in any of the school systems would agree with that. The rules are what they are currently, and you do have to follow them. My daughter has been in quarantine just last week. I know how much she missed in education this whole last year. We're still struggling with what she failed to learn. She is not a very good online virtual person. If she was, I would have her homeschooled. She struggles. She needs to be able to ask questions to clarify things that are taught in the classroom on that day. So right now what's happening is if you have a question, you have to somehow get a hold of the teacher. That teacher also has to answer 30 to 40 other students, I'm assuming. And they're frankly just struggling, answering all the questions. The kids are getting behind. The kids are getting frustrated. Having to ask a simple question becomes a bad grade, becomes a missing assignment, becomes a grade that you just can't improve. And I know that it's not the teacher's fault. They can only do what they can do. It's just simply a manpower and fight against the rules that they are right now. If we could keep them in the classroom and not have to stay at home under quarantine, and if the masks are the solution, wouldn't we just please try this? I mean, I'm stressed out as a parent, and she doesn't require all that much help, but just seeing her struggle through it and fight it for a good grade and to meet the expectations from the teachers and from her parents to be the best she can be, if that's a daily struggle, why wouldn't you want to help them? Just put the mask on them and help them, all of them. That's just not my kid. I know it's not. She's not smart. She just can't deal with the situation as it is given. So if 3 weeks will make a difference, if we could at least try that, if it does, I would really applaud that. Thank you very much.
Bottom on the other page, Ryan Ewing. Ryan?
Good evening, members of the board. I did speak last week, but I spoke on behalf of somebody else tonight. I'd like to speak on behalf of my family and some other families in the crowd. First and foremost, thank you for allowing us to speak. Unfortunately, looking at the board, I think the decision has already been made, but that's just, we're going to have to follow through with that as parents see fit. I want to talk about 3 things real quick. I won't even take 5 minutes. First of all, common sense. Did we lose it? If you stood in the parking lot, if you stood in this building and watch outside of school. Common sense is out the window. I see individuals in here with masks that I will see Friday night at the football games with no mask. Some of you are up there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do need to have order this evening. It was stated that we'll respect the person's opportunity to speak and be heard. Thank you.
All I'm saying is, let's go back to common sense, please, because it's only going to interfere with our children. Second, I kind of already hit on it, hypocrisy. I see a lot of teachers out and about on social media, at concerts, drinking, no masks, but yet Monday morning we're in school with masks. It's kind of like a double-edged sword there. And then the last topic I want to hit on is parenting. Let the parents be the parent, schools be the schools. I don't come into your home and tell you what to do. I, as well as others, would appreciate if you guys didn't do the same. Thank you.
Next, just 2 on the other left hand, Brandon Rulin. Brandon?
Good evening. Mr. Detweiler, tonight you asked the board to give you permission to mandate all of our children. But what you're really asking the board to do is give you permission to practice medicine. The masks are a medical device. It is PPE, but it is being used in a medical fashion. It is a violation of ORC 4731. You're not licensed to practice medicine. I didn't hire you to practice medicine. And I don't remember ever signing my children up as a ward of the state or signing over parental rights. We're at a slippery slope as a country where we say we either draw the line in the sand or we keep slipping. This week it's mandatory mask. Next week it could be mandatory vaccines. You know, what's stopping you from taking our kids in the back room, stabbing them in the arm and sending them back to us without us even knowing? We have no clue. I just ask that you let the parents make the choice when it comes to my kids' health. That's not your call. That's not your place. It's mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 6, Denny Setzler.
Nearly 3,000 Americans died. 20 years later, we still say we will never forget 9/11. During these 20 years, thousands of servicemen and women have been severely injured or died in the name of protecting us. They gave their lives to protect us. Our educational system teaches students about critical thinking, which is the analysis of facts to form a judgment. Science teaches students that a conclusion must be supported by facts and precise data. The curriculum management plan for the Fremont City Schools states that one of the responsibilities of a school board member is to use data to influence policies. To use data to influence policies. Today, the majority of Ohio's public K-12 students are required by their local schools to wear a mask in school. Ohio data shows mask policies are working to limit the spread of COVID-19. According to Governor DeWine, there have been fewer quarantines in schools where everyone wears a mask, which helps to keep the children in the classroom. The medical professionals here this evening had the expertise to verify facts pertaining to COVID-19. We are dealing with the health and the safety of our children and the larger community. The masking decision must be based on science and the advice of medical professionals. I am asking that you have the courage to protect our community and our children and to teach them to do the same.
Speaker number 7, Carrie Schwolko. Okay. Moving. So number 6, 7, 8. Tom Michaels.
Thank you, Board. I have 4 special needs children, one that went to junior high. The second week of school, he's been sent home because he has to quarantine. So I have to quarantine all 3 of my other children because he's been around someone with COVID, even though he wears a mask. But that's 2 weeks into school, and you already got people out way more than last year. It's getting worse. The mask mandate has to be put in effect, and they should even offer virtual classes for people that have diseases that can't get this. My wife has cancer. One of my middle child has asthma so bad, he's had double pneumonia 4 times. The only time he didn't get sick was last year when he was homeschooled. They did very well homeschooled. I know a lot of kids that didn't, but ours happened to do very well. My oldest had straight A's. He got a scholarship for it. The youngest ones did fine. But if they're not gonna, even on the bus, there's people that don't wear masks on them, even though it's mandatory. My boy comes home and says, they're not even required. They're not doing nothing. These boys are riding bus without masks. So if nothing's being done, even if they mandate masks, what's the use of it? It has to be, something has to be done. I mean, they have monitors on these buses that you can see if the kids are wearing them or if they're not. I mean, it is a state law that you have to wear a mask on a bus. And even if you have to wear masks, When you have lunch, you don't have to. The senior high is put it that they have to stay so many feet apart, but these elementary schools are packed. They have so many students. How are you going to do to stay 6 feet apart with your mask off eating? It's going to be tough. So if you do some of the schools or some of the kids that would like to be homeschooled, take a vote and see who would want to be homeschooled. And see if you can, because it's already in the system. It's all ready to go. You do it with the junior high when they did it for the 10 days. The system is all set up to do homeschooling. Because I don't know if the people are going to wear masks or not. It's hard telling. A lot of people refuse to. Doesn't matter what what the evidence shows. Masks do work. It's been proven. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Speaker number 9, Alex
Excuse me,
Moore.
Mr. Detweiler.
I'm sorry?
I have a request, if I may. Sir, I appreciate your participation wholeheartedly, but I do recognize you've been at a prior meeting and have been able to have your comments on record. So in all fairness, I think that it's appropriate to have someone in opposition who spoke last time to get to speak as well. We have to have it fair and balanced.
Sure.
So if there's someone among the group who did get to speak last time, we'll take it one for one. And you call.
Okay. My name is Dr. Jennifer Geyer. I am a lifelong resident of Fremont. As a taxpayer, I am gravely concerned with the possibility of the school board again mandating masking under the guise of protecting their health. At the last meeting, one doctor said that she was not aware of any research contrary to her belief in the science of masks that was published in any reputable journals. I have brought with me a stack of scholarly research articles that represent research from as far back as 2006 that suggests masks do not prevent the transmission of viruses. This research has been published in a variety of reputable sources, such as the American Journal of Infection Control, Annals of Internal Medicine, Influenza and Other Respiratory Viruses, International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and the Journal of Pediatric and Child Health, just to name a few. Indeed, if you examine the research, you will find that the science on masks is inconclusive. About the only time you find a study suggesting masks work is with individuals who are symptomatically sick and have the ability to spread their illness through large droplets. While at first we did not know how COVID was spread, we now know it spread primarily through aerosol. COVID particles are approximately 0.06 to 0.14 microns in diameter. This is smaller than the diameter of a hair follicle. Research published in the American Journal of Infection Control studying a pediatric population in 2015 found that small particles can penetrate a face mask. Indeed, a microstructural analysis of masks published in Communications Materials in 2021 found that the pore size of masks ranged from 20 microns to 100 microns. If you consider that the size of COVID particles is only 0.06 to 0.14 microns, you can easily understand how these particles can penetrate a mask. In other words, COVID particles being so small render a mask useless due to the ability of the particles to penetrate the mask itself. Stephen Petty, a leading industrial hygienist, has spent his career studying how to prevent the spread of viruses and other contaminants in organizational settings. He said that personal protective equipment, PPE, is the least desirable way to protect people when it comes to the spread of viruses. Contrary to what everyone has been told, surgical masks and cloth face masks are not PPE. Petty says that a mask does not provide the wearer with a reliable level of protection from inhaling smaller airborne particles and is not considered respiratory protection. This is because leakage occurs around the edge of the mask when the user inhales. If you review Petty's work on his Rumble channel called Petty Podcasts, you will see his demonstration as to how with even just a 3% gap in the surface area of a mask, the mask is rendered 0% effective. In other words, it's 100% useless with just a 3% gap. Consider the masks you're currently wearing. Do you have any gaps in them? A gap of 3% is very small and renders the mask useless. In a study published in the Journal of Public Health Research in 2020, it was found that adolescents touched their masks so much that they had an average contamination area on the mask of 530 centimeters squared. Their conclusion, when the hand touches the surface of the mask, it spreads the virus to the subsequent contact areas. In other words, not only are masks ineffective at preventing penetration of the virus because of pore size and gaps, they are actually petri dishes of bacteria and viruses positioned closely to our children's respiratory tracts. I thank you for taking the time to hear what I have to say. I'm afraid you've only been exposed to one side of the story. The Cochrane Database of Systematic Review published a study in 2020 where they engaged in a meta-analysis of 44 studies of masks from 2009 and beyond. Their conclusion, the data on masks is inconclusive, and the risk of bias is high in the research. In other words, the results of some studies have been statistically insignificant, yet researchers claim support for masks anyway. If you know anything about research methodology, you cannot claim support for something when the data is insignificant. For this reason and for the reasons I presented, I ask that you examine the articles I brought carefully and do your own research as well before you make a decision to mask the children. The science is not settled. The potential exists for masks to not only be ineffective, but dangerous to the health of the wearer. Therefore, I want you to ask yourself one question. Is it possible that with a mask mandate, you are actually creating situations in which you are essentially promoting the spread of a virus and other illnesses? Taking that risk by wearing a mask should be a choice, not a mandate.
Speaker number 10, Alex Moroff.
Thank you. I do not claim to speak on behalf of the medical community, but I would like to remind everyone that our local medical health professionals are just that, local. They work here, they live here, they pay taxes here, they send their kids to school here. They're our friends and neighbors. These are not electronic strangers. They don't talk to you through a little glowing screen. The knowledge they possess comes from years of education, practice, and firsthand experience. These are the people who historians refer to as primary sources. Medical professionals in our communities are getting their information from education and direct observation. So when they speak, I tend to listen and respect the words they're saying. If our local health professionals are giving us this recommendation, I would no more say to one of them, we believe in the immune system, as a refute to their recommendation, than I would tell a mechanic, we believe in the engine, when he tells me it's time to change the oil. Our professionals believe in the immune system too, and chances are very good they can better explain its functioning than you or me. It is, of course, smart and reasonable to ask questions of experts, and second opinions are not a strange concept in the medical field. But how many times must the same people give us the same answers to the same questions before it becomes apparent that these questions are being asked in bad faith? Do we truly need more evidence, more data, more information? Or do we really only want to keep pressing until we hear the answer that makes us feel good and requires no effort on our part whatsoever? I'm here primarily because of my concern of the health risks this poses to our citizens, but I'm equally concerned about what our actions tonight demonstrate to our own children regarding their education in their community. Why would any child want to grow up to be a doctor or nurse when we are demonstrating that you will be ignored, ridiculed, or sadly threatened for telling the truth? Go be a YouTuber or blogger instead, since it takes far less effort and apparently more people will believe you, even if you're a total stranger, so long as you're entertaining. The rejection of reason, empiricism, and evidence from local professionals who know what they're talking about, provide direct care for people in need, and actually have a stake in our community is a rejection of discipline, hard work, and education itself. Perhaps even worse than this, it would be a rejection of our friends who live here and are in need. These are not lessons that I want our children to learn. Thank you, sir.
David Pash, number 11.
Kind of an old guy, so it takes a little while to get up here. Yeah, I took my coat off because I have the right to bear arms, correct?
Oh.
Well, that's what we should be doing, is laughing a lot more, folks. Okay, I've been a science teacher for a million years, 43 years, taught in the area, except for 6 years teaching in Australia in high school setting. I first of all want to commend the board and the superintendent. You guys have one heck of a job to do. And you're not doing it for a lot of money. It's the small pittance you're getting for it is not going to put you into the 1%, I'm sure. Secondly, the doctors who have taken their time to come here and speak to us, and the healthcare professionals, they've taken time off from a very tough schedule to be here, and I'd like to commend them too. And I think the board and those doctors do need an applause. I noticed that we did a Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And I would say that our real allegiance should be not to the flag or a country or a football or baseball team, but our real allegiance should be to our species, Homo sapiens, with a little bit of Homo neanderthalis thrown in there, about 2%, I think it is now. Our species is what we are trying to save. And of course, trying to save that, you have to save lots of other things too, our environment. But we have that allegiance, I think, to our species. And what do we all want to do as a species? The number one thing is to survive. We kind of like this thing, this very complex chemistry that we call life. We kind of like it. We want to keep doing it. So I think the question is here, what do we do to do that? Well, first of all, it's always a big picture. I wish I had a half an hour, but I don't. There's a big picture here. Our early hominoid ancestors figured out that groups survived a lot better than individuals. And so today, we survive much better as families and groups than we do individuals. We have more protection, we have more food, we have more of what we need for this crazy thing we call life. And so the problem with that is that the group has to make decisions for the group. And in doing so, some individuals are not going to be heavy, but the decisions are for the group. And as I said before, the group is the most important thing. It keeps the species going. And of course, a lot of individuals along with the group. So I guess I see this decision to, let's say, wear masks, not a decision that will help and be satisfied, would satisfy other just single individuals. It's a group decision. And again, I'm a science person, and all that I have seen and all that we've heard here too tonight and all I've read is that masks will help. We know they're not 100% efficient, but they will help. Let's do everything we can to help. When someone has a rough time, we call them up on the phone and say, is there anything I can do to help? And even if it's a small thing, you do it. So I'm suggesting that we do try to get those get people masked, get that on. We have problems with that, though, because we always have a couple of cards we can play. People who don't want to wear masks, what if one child comes to school without a mask? Well, he can use the... Thank you very much.
I believe Mr. Pash has addressed the board in the past.
Yes, he is.
So could we have someone from the opposition to keep our balance there, please? Or I could continue on.
Ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of the meeting this evening was to allow for participation. The community, rightfully so, made it very clear that the last meeting notice didn't give much time. It fit legal requirement, but it didn't give much time. The extension of this meeting was to allow those who did not get to participate in previous meetings to speak or to have their statements read on their behalf, a chance to go first. So if there's time at the end, certainly if someone has an additional point they'd like to make, we can entertain that. But please respect that if you have spoken or your statements have been read for your behalf previously, to let others have a turn now.
All right, we'll continue on then. Speaker number 12 will be Kay Guzlin. Okay, thank you. Matt Walging.
Thank you. Do I have to do the address thing? Or no?
I've got it.
Okay. I just wanted to address the school board from a faith perspective on masks, what we've heard that they can do with protecting each other. Our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, as I believe, said that we're to give two great commandments, to love God and to love your neighbor. And if the second greatest commandment is loving our neighbor, it seems that masks are an easy way for us to say, I care about you and I love you, because it keeps our germs to ourselves. And in the midst of a pandemic, it makes that statement to our neighbors, which is everybody we come in contact with. So I just wanted to address from a faith perspective, a quick, short, easy way that we can care for one another in this community. Thank you.
Nikki Wasserman.
Good evening. First of all, I do want to thank the board for having this meeting and allowing me to speak tonight. I do recognize that you have a tough decision ahead of you, and this is a no-win situation for everyone. It's my hope that we can remain respectful of everyone here and remember our children look up to us, and we need to set a good example for them. Now, last year, my children were virtual for a couple reasons. My children had a consistent schedule, and I didn't have to worry about what days they were supposed to be in school and which days they were not. I was not crazy about your back to school plan last year when the mask wearing or school days were dependent on the color of the county. I didn't want to worry about what to do with my children if the county was this color or that color. I was confident in my virtual decision when the board decided to tweak their back to school plan before school even started, angering the public because they had made their decisions based on your policy. This year, my kids are happy. They're even excited to be back, and I was happy when I watched the school board meeting from August when it was decided that the school would follow any state mandates concerning COVID. I felt that this would be a normal year for my students. Well, week 3 of school, the middle school was closed, and now here we are in week 4, wondering if we should change our position already following the state mandate. So this is my question. When will this end? At the beginning, we were told 3 weeks. Now I've heard maybe in 2022. The goalpost keeps moving, and we aren't even told what the goal is. Is it no sickness at all? We're never going to win that battle. People get sick because germs are everywhere. Some are more susceptible to germs than others. We haven't done this for the seasonal flu or anything else. So why are we doing this now? We need to let our immune systems do their jobs and work. Most people, especially children, will recover from this virus. Last year, the school board gave everyone the freedom of choice. If you did not like the policy, you could be virtual. That's why I chose virtual for my family. This year, they also allowed for the freedom of choice. Wear a mask if you want. It's even recommended, but they are not required. So tonight, I am asking you to always, always fight for freedom. I feel that this is getting taken away from us little by little, and I will fight back. I am not anti-mask. I am not anti-vaccine, but I am 100% for a family's freedom of choice. I know that COVID is real and it can get bad. I have friends that have gotten COVID and some friends have lost loved ones over it. I am not dismissing that at all, but I do know that there are other families that have legitimate reasons for not wearing a mask. What about the ones that have breathing issues? What about the ones that have anxiety? My child is one that has anxiety and it can get bad. When the middle school was shut down last week, Monday was like the first day of school all over again. Sunday night, Monday morning came around, we had panic and anxiety and a sleepless night. When I have to wear one, I get a headache pretty darn quick. How are constant headaches being a positive learning environment? I have a friend's daughter who passes out or is in danger of passing out from wearing one because she overheats and panics. What about those with speech disabilities that cannot communicate well with a mask on? Think about the student with hearing issues. I also have hearing issues, and I cannot read lips when someone's wearing a mask. So if a kid has hearing issues, can they read their teacher's lips? And thankfully, you did say PE and recess, because last year I understood that they were mandated to wear them all day long. So my kids who have an hour bus ride one way, that's 9 hours of mask wearing. I cannot imagine breathing in a sweaty mask for hours and hours. We know more about this virus now and risks than we did a year ago, and we need to live with those risks because really there's no other option. And with the freedom of choice, the families that feel safer with their children to wear masks should always definitely have that option. Send their children to school with a mask. That freedom should not be taken away from anyone. Maybe they or a family member is more susceptible to getting sick. Perhaps it will ease their anxiety of getting sick themselves. Or they are on a sports team and they are following the rules so they can save their season. Or they don't want to quarantine as long. For whatever their reason, they have that right to wear that mask. And tonight, I believe we're here to fight for the freedoms for all students. Thank you.
Number 15, Bruce Joseph.
Good evening, and thank you, School Board, for allowing us to do this. There's something I want to ask, or want to mention, actually, that I've not heard mentioned the entire evening. I see a lot of faces. I grew up in Fremont. I've lived here most of my life. A lot of familiar faces, a lot of friendly faces. I don't see any faces that are not friendly. A great many of you are friends of mine, some I consider very personal friends, close friends. My hope is that when we leave here tonight, we remember we live in a small town. We're still Fremont residents. We're still neighbors. We still worship together. Our kids go to school together. They play together. I hope that when we leave here, we remember that. We treat each other with respect, kindness, compassion, and love. This is a small town. We all know that. I've seen some very unpleasant things on social media. I've seen threats. And I don't like it out of my hometown. It's very disturbing. Enough of that, enough of me being on my soapbox. I just hope we remember we're still neighbors, we're still friends, and as far as I'm concerned, we're always going to be that way. This should not divide us. We have differences of opinion, and that's okay. That's what makes us different. All right, now I just want to share a couple of things, and then I will step back and let someone else speak. I don't think it's fair to compare last year's numbers with what's going on this year because there was a great many students that were virtual learning. Am I correct? I think I am. So I don't know if we can compare those numbers. I know numbers can be skewed, and I just don't want them to be skewed any more than they already can be. Now, this is some data that was taken from the ohiocoronavirus.gov website, and regarding the school districts. Out of the 532 school districts reporting COVID cases from July 1, 2021 through 9/16/2021, in districts where masking is optional, cumulative student cases totaled 6,687. In districts where masking is required for all students, the numbers that were reported were 7,971, those cumulative cases. I found it interesting that in the districts where masking was required for all, their cases were higher. Additionally, this is also from the Ohio Coronavirus website. Fremont City Schools, and this is again reporting as of today, 9/23, for Fremont City Schools, we had 29 new cases and 59 cumulative. And let me break that down. Out of a student population of 3,519 students, our new case percentage was 0.82%. Okay, so that's less than 1% of the student population. The cumulative cases, which was 59 out of 3,519 students, equates to a student population, a total of 1.59%. Okay? I am not sure, I'm a data person, I look at data all day long for my job. I don't understand why we're talking about mask mandates. And please understand, I'm not against masks. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. It's okay. But I don't understand why we would mandate masks with percentages so low. Okay. Moving on. I heard something earlier. I wish the doctors were still here, but I understand they have a tough job, a lot of sickness, they work a lot of hours, but I heard something being discussed about the Delta variant, the Delta variant, the Delta variant. Full disclosure, I had COVID. So did my family. We all recovered. I had conversations with multiple doctors. One of them was an ER doctor. They don't test for Delta. It's all COVID. Now, as a side note, if you think a rapid test is accurate, you may want to double check that. Rapid tests are not accurate. How do I know? I had a rapid test, tested negative. That same day, I had a PCR test. The next day, I got the results and it was positive. Okay, so let's be clear. We're getting a lot of false information. Some of these tests it may not be a fail-safe. If you said, well, the child tested negative, they can come back to school. They may have COVID. I heard somebody say, it might have been the superintendent mentioned something about Governor DeWine. Somebody did. I heard Governor DeWine the other day say, it's not a matter of if we get COVID, it's when we get COVID. Okay, so that may be an issue that we want to think about, that these tests are not fail-safes. Talk a little bit about masks. When I had COVID, I got dehydrated. That was my fault. I didn't drink enough fluids and had my wife take me to the emergency room. If you've ever been dehydrated, you feel pretty miserable. Took me to the emergency room. They said, yeah, you're going to be fine. We'll pump you full of fluids. You'll be good. Before we walked in, my wife was wearing a mask, a cloth mask, like many of you are wearing. They said, you have to take that off and put on a surgical mask. Okay. So that told us right there that the cloth masks are ineffective. I'm not even sure the surgical masks that some of you are wearing, some of you out here are wearing, are effective because of the gaps. And I heard Dr. Geyer mention that as well. I've watched many of you pull on your masks. Your masks are now contaminated. How do we know this? A package of masks over there, if anybody'd like to read the back of it, it says avoid touching it to avoid contamination. So you've all contaminated your masks. Okay? For children's masks, it's recommended the service time is only about 4 hours. After that, they should change it out. Adult masks, the duration is about 8 hours. I'm assuming, again, this is an assumption, I'm assuming they think that we're not going to pull on our masks. I don't know about you all, but I pull on my mask when I have to wear one when I meet with clients, and I'm pulling on that thing all the time. And here's my concern. My concern is the unintended consequences of masking. Now, last year when and this is personal experience, speaking for your children, will speak to my personal experience and my children's experience. My oldest son and I have seasonal allergies. Unfortunately, his are a bit worse than mine. We both had sinus infections last year, sore throat, all these kind of respiratory illnesses that go with breathing in your own germs. When we got rid of the masks in late fall, they went away. It was amazing. We could breathe. We're breathing clean air. When I went through the recovery process of having COVID, my doctor said, you need to avoid wearing a mask. I ended up with pneumonia. She said, you need to be breathing fresh air. The last thing you need to do is be breathing your own germs. So here's some more unintended consequences. Are we ready for the increase in respiratory illnesses that our kids are going to have? Because a potential for a weakened immune system, and they're breathing their own germs in a dirty mask. Okay? I'm very concerned about that. Bronchitis, the doctors mentioned bronchitis, RSV. My family doctor said they are seeing, and I agree with what the doctor is saying. I know they're working very hard. I saw what was going on with our own family doctor, and I saw what was going on in the emergency room the couple hours I spent there. There were a lot of people that were sick. When I spoke to my family doctor afterwards, the comments were, we're seeing an increase in RSV, an increase in bronchitis. I don't think we can live in a bubble. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Number 16, Nate Koenig.
Thank you very much. I'll just try to cut this down to like 8 pages instead of 15 that I had planned. So it doesn't surprise me at all that we're here right now. I think the last statistics I saw that Sandusky County was at about 45% vaccinated, and you just have to go over to Kroger, and I think the percentage is about 98% not wearing a mask. So what that tells me is that in general, this community has not taken this disease very seriously, and I think you can see it everywhere you go. We've had many healthcare professionals, doctors, people from the hospitals have talked about the seriousness of this and given you all kinds of statistics, and so I'm not going to bore you with redoing those. I think if you were a statistic person, if that was going to convince you that this is a serious matter, it would have already convinced you. But what I want to talk about tonight is a little bit different. I want to talk about civil liberties. I think that for many of the people that are anti-mask, the idea of civil liberties is forefront. And this is one place where I would say I 100% agree with you. I think this is all about civil liberties. My children have the right to attend a publicly funded school, knowing that every precaution is being taken to protect my children and my family from a deadly pandemic that is killing people. It's killing people. Everyone in this room has the right to demand safety. In fact, safety is one of the basic reasons that we have a government. I am tired of the callous and misinformed concept of civil liberties that suggests that you have the right to send a sick or exposed, unmasked child to school and endanger the health and lives of other children, their teachers, their staff, their family members, simply because you think a mask violates your civil liberties. This is a perversion of the concept. Civil liberties exist so that you, as an individual, can live harmoniously in community with others. Never, never so that your personal liberties can threaten your community. Our children have the right to be safe. The mask exists, and speaking to the doctor that had talked about the ineffectiveness, masks exist to protect your children from mine. It can give some protection. We've all talked about this. It's less effective protecting against being exposed by another. The reason why you want everyone masked is so that if your child has COVID and is wearing a mask, it's less likely that your child is going to give COVID to my child. Wearing a mask is about protecting others. Wearing a mask is about caring for people and their well-being, the other children, the teachers, of their families. Wearing a mask is about living in a community and desiring the health and safety of that community in the midst of a pandemic. It's absolutely senseless to argue, well, your child can wear a mask if he or she chooses. Because the reality is that I can take every precaution to ensure that my child is not threatening the health of your child. But if you take none, my child is at risk from your child. Our children have the right to be safe. Do we live now in a society where nobody cares about protecting others? We have parents in this community that, through their opposition to protecting other children and families, are in essence telling their kids that being free means caring about nobody else. Our misguided understanding of liberty will allow us to watch children get sick, bring a deadly virus into their homes, and watch vulnerable family members get sick and die because we care nothing about anything but ourselves. How many people are we going to see die, and how many are we willing to watch? I can't speak to why we have such an egocentric worldview, but I can definitively tell you that it has nothing to do with religion. The God that I believe in instructs that we love our neighbors as ourselves. The God I believe in says that we care for the sick, the marginalized, those who can't speak for themselves. The God that I believe in demands that we care for our children and not just our own. Masking your child is a demonstration that values you wish to teach your child or that they should care about others. Thank you.
Mr. Detweiler, I think based on our timeline when it started, we have time for one more.
Number 17, Christina Rodriguez.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? I have a pretty thick mask on, so. First of all, I would just like to say that I'm here to fight for students' lives because their freedom means nothing when they're dead. I'm also here to speak on behalf of my daughter Maria and my grandsons Milo, who is 10, who's in the 5th grade, and Lincoln 5, who is a kindergartner. Both are your elementary school students in the Fremont City School District. That, as we know, has yet to reinstate their mask mandate that you previously issued last year. I would like to highlight the impact of your decision to not implement a mask mandate for this year that it has had on your students and their families beyond just wearing a mask and potentially getting COVID, and why it is imperative that you do so now. Maria, my daughter, Milo and Lincoln's mom, has a rare form of asthma. And until last year, because of the pandemic public health safety protocols, is hospitalized every single year with near organ failure oxygen levels. They also have a 5-month-old baby sister at home as well. Lincoln, your student, who is also asthmatic, has been dealing with a flare-up for about a week and was treated at home as usual. On Tuesday, September 7th, his asthma suddenly worsened, his breathing was retracted, which means the soft tissue and the skin was sinking between his ribs and his chest and his oxygen levels had dropped to 85 at home. Oxygen levels of 85 and below can begin to affect the brain. He was rushed to the ER at ProMedica Memorial Hospital, where his oxygen levels were 88, still dangerously low. Lincoln was immediately given a breathing treatment and given a cannula to bring his oxygen levels up. He was given a COVID swab, his fourth at least, in less than a year, and second hospitalization within 10 months. Maria was told that Lincoln was going to be admitted, but that he would need to be transferred because Memorial did not have any beds available. We have a lot of COVID upstairs, she was told. Memorial began to call other hospitals to find an available bed for him. Toledo had no beds available, save for one pediatric bed. She was then informed that he could be admitted or he could remain in the ER at Memorial Hospital until a bed opened up. But she knew that that would only have taken up a bed in the ER for someone else who needed it. Lincoln would ultimately be transferred to Rainbow Babies in Cleveland just after 5 a.m. on September 8th, where he would spend the next 2 days. This marked Lincoln's third hospital visit, along with his second needing to be hospitalized. So when I hear others say that hospitals are not running out of beds, I can tell you that it is in fact true, because it happened to my grandson. Right here in Fremont, not in the news somewhere else. This is not debatable. Upon returning to school the next week, Maria was informed by the school nurse that Lincoln would no longer be able to have his breathing treatment administered at school that are prescribed by his doctor, Dr. Orevalo, who spoke tonight. Maria stated, "I was informed that Lincoln would not be allowed access to his nebulizer in school. The reasoning being the nebulizer emits too much moisture into the air, and due to COVID, they would not allow it." She then asked, even with prescription, and they responded with yes. Which is ironic, because if the district was actually concerned about the moisture in the air and saliva, you would mandate masks. Yet, here we are, still debating while children can't have access to medications in school, while other non-medical life-saving activities such as sports, band, and orchestra are allowed to continue. Lincoln now has a prescription for an inhaler, which he would be able to take. However, the school will not allow him to take it back and forth from school. It must remain there, unless he is picked up by a parent or guardian, which is just not feasible every single day. As of right now, he is not receiving any medically necessary and prescribed life-saving treatments for his asthma. And as long as you continue to not mandate masks, should he get sick again, which we know he will, even if he wears a mask, because we know the data shows that masks work better when everybody wears them. But hospitals will be hard-pressed to find a bed available for him, and Lincoln will continue to not have access to his medications at school, which does nothing put him at greater risk, along with his mom and baby sister. Maria has made it very clear that if the district continues to show little regard for the safety of your students or children, she will have no choice but to remove them from the district.
Okay, that concludes our hearing of the public session. So, facilities and operation. Policy. Item 1.
Item 1 is a consideration of policy EBEA, use of face coverings.
And what this policy does is give the superintendent the authority to require face coverings and work cooperatively with various health departments and agencies in the attempt to decrease the spread of the virus. So, we have a motion to approve item 1.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Laird. We have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Espiritu. Okay, discussion. Are there any questions or discussion regarding item 1?
I would like to speak. At the last meeting, when the doctor showed emotion, she was very rudely criticized for it. I am going to show emotion, and you may think whatever you think. I care with all my heart. That's the reason I put my name on a ballot, to subject myself to difficult situations, to try to help our children get a good education, to try to make sure that our community had meetings like this that were facilitated in a way that you could participate fairly. No one ever dreamed what's been brought upon us would come upon us. Never did I, in this position, in my professional role in finance, or in your roles in your homes or in your professions, ever think we would be in this condition. But we are. And as a result, some of the very things that our core principles are now split. For me, this is a very divided internal question. I love Fremont's children with all my heart. I truly do. I don't want anyone to get sick if it can be avoidable. I don't want anyone to have discomfort with a mask that could be avoidable. I have asthma. Times that I'm on prednisone and I'm doing breathing treatments, this is tough. So I do get it. I don't take this decision lightly. Those of you who know me personally, those who do not, I will share that I come from a political platform that supports limited government and individual choice. That is very much at my heart. At the same time, as a school board member, one of the most important things that I can provide our children is a good education, the best method of education that we can give them. What we saw, with no doubt, based on the numbers last year when kids were in virtual learning, is the majority of students are not maturely developed enough to be complete independent learners. And in the structure of the common home in our community, they do not have the resources at home that a traditional homeschool family may have. They suffered academically tremendously. The statistics on the number of students in that environment, when tested, were failing every subject. Every one of them was alarming. I absolutely hate being put in a position to choose, to remove your choice as a family. I hate it. I also cannot have kids subjected to being removed to the best method of education we have available. And my concern is this, is that could happen to them multiple times. The school board does not have authority to modify the matrix of quarantine. We didn't make it. It does not fall under our authority. It is provided to us to work within. The 3 feet difference makes a difference. Ask the teachers. It makes a difference in how much they can maintain those students. And the number of students that I believe are in quarantine that may not need to be and could be in their classrooms with their teachers, with their lessons, would be significantly reduced. I also want to speak to the shortage in workforce. This is something that I know outside of my role here with the school. It is significant in every profession, in every industry, everywhere. There is a shortage. When we add on top of the shortage we have quarantining that may not be necessary of our professionals who need to be with our children, teaching them and taking care of them, we have to consider that. So while I believed when I made my choice to support the family choice when we discussed it in the summer, and I would love with all my heart for it to get back there as soon as possible. The fact of the matter is information changes, and I am humble enough to adjust my course when I think it's necessary, and I want our children in the classroom. Thank you.
Do you have any concern?
The first thing I'd like to say is, in the 5 years that I've been a member of the school board, I can honestly say that I know everyone up here well enough that everyone truly wants what's best for the kids. I believe that wholeheartedly. I wouldn't want anyone to ever think whatever our opinions are or our beliefs are, that changes. I do believe that. I'm going to come from a different standpoint, obviously. And it's hard. I want my kid in school. I have a daughter here at the middle school, and I want her in school. Absolutely. She did horrible on the hybrid method last year. And that's why we decided, as a board, that was not the best course of action for most kids. I'm not here to refute any medical experts. I own a cookie shop. I bake cookies for a living. I'm not going to try to second guess a single doctor. The only thing I will say is in my education, we've talked about critical thinking tonight. I have learned to be a critical thinker and a logical thinker and to find things out for myself. And the problem is to me, there is everything under the sun from one side to the other from medical experts that don't agree. Just like a lot of us don't agree on something in this room right now. And medical experts, no matter what you want to say, and it's not some Yahoo out in the mountains in Utah that is out there, no one's finding them on Google. These are legitimate medical people, have very difference of opinions. Where does that fall for us for a school board? My biggest issue, and I understand that this doesn't come to the medical part of it and keeping our kids safe, is that the leaders of our state or of our country have done a horrible job at this. This should not fall on a school district whatsoever. We have to make that decision tonight. I understand that, and I'm not backing down from having to make that. But a year ago, we shut down our economy, basically. And as a small business owner, I see what that happened, what takes place there. We're going to kill more businesses than people in this thing. And I'm not saying we take the place of a business instead of a life. I'm not saying that at all. It's tragic. But what our governor, what our past president, what our current president are doing is they're saying everything under the sun that we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. Then mandate it for us. Don't leave it up to how many districts are in the state of Ohio?
600.
Hundreds.
There's 88 counties. We're not even leaving it up to the counties. We're leaving it up to the individual school districts. If our governor was so worried about it before a year and a half ago, where he told every school in the state of Ohio to shut down, everyone went virtual, no questions asked, and then shut down businesses, and then implemented a mask mandate. Look, I don't mind being inconvenienced. That's fine. If there's a mask mandate and that's what I need to do, that's what I need to do. If there is a business that says that we require masks for you to come in, I will wear a mask or I will choose not to go in that business. That's absolutely fine. At the Cookie Lady, we do not require a mask for you to enter. There may be some people that don't agree with that and they won't come in to buy cookies. I'm absolutely fine with that. That is your right to be able to do that. But it should not fall on us as a school district to make this decision. I think there's way too much. The bar changes all the time. I think someone else talked about this earlier tonight. That goalpost moves all the time. And it does. Because at first it was, when can we get back to normal? When the vaccination is made available. Okay, the vaccination was made available. Well, now it's, we need to get a certain percentage of people to take the vaccination. So now we're mandating a vaccination. Then it's, well, you're not going to be able to travel without the vaccination. And now it's, well, as soon as we have a vaccination available to kids under 12, that bar keeps moving and moving and moving. And when does it stop? At some point, there has to be an end goal. And what is it? We know that a vaccination has been said that it's never to eradicate the virus. We know that's not going to go away. 20 years from now, there will probably still be statistics of people dying from COVID-19. And I understand that. And as tragic as that is, there still has to be something there to set the bar at where we have to go. We can't keep moving it and figure that we're going to get to it, because eventually there is a slope. Whether you agree with that or not, in my opinion, there is a slope that we can go down. And when does it stop? And I don't see an end out there. I mean, we have a president who is saying he's going to mandate vaccinations for employers of 100 or employers of 100 employees or more. How ludicrous, if we look at it critical thinking and logically, does that sound? And yet schools are exempt from that. We have over 500 staff members for Fremont City Schools alone. Yet we're not expected to implement that based on what the president says. Yet the schools are getting the brunt of all the attention right now, saying this is the hotbed for the virus. And I'm not saying that it is or isn't, but if it is, then why isn't our governor saying that everyone is going to wear a mask? Why is our president exempting schools from having a vaccine mandate? There's no sense in that thinking whatsoever. And so where does it end with that? And from the emotional standpoint, with 2 daughters, I get it. We can have, and it's horrible and it's tragic. If my daughters were in that place, I would give my life for my daughters in a heartbeat without hesitation. Absolutely. So to have my daughter go through on a vent because of COVID, or we had a parent talk last Friday where his daughter is autistic and she needs to see mouths moving because she hasn't spoken a word in her entire life. I don't know how I would deal with that. Either way, it doesn't matter. But it all fits into this that we have to decide what we're going to do. And it's ridiculous to me that we're the ones that have to make the decision, but obviously that's what we have to do. There are a couple things that I disagree with a little bit when it comes to the quarantining part. My wife is a school teacher at Otis. She's on quarantine right now because a child in her room tested positive. So she's one of the staff problems for our school district this week. She was out all week. They had to have subs. We didn't have enough subs before COVID-19 hit. We certainly don't have them now. The quarantining process is absolutely, there isn't a single business. Being a small business and being business-minded, a business cannot go on that. Everything that I have researched and looked at, and all the information, I have some information here. I only pulled it from the CDC and from the State of Ohio Health Department. Everything when it comes to contact tracing and quarantining is a recommendation, and it all says you should do this, you recommend this. There is no mandates out there saying that it has to be followed. There are no laws that says that. The CDC cannot create a law. There isn't anything out there that says that has to be followed to a T that I can find. It is all recommended from the CDC, and I understand that. But there are also other recommendations from the CDC that we don't follow. Heart disease kills over 600,000 people every year. Yet I'm still allowed to sell sugar every day out of my business that can create heart disease. We have more fast food restaurants in this town than anything that there is. The processed food, anything like that can cause heart disease. Over 600,000 people every year for the last 2 decades have died of heart disease. Cancer is all over the place. Yet we can buy cigarettes at a dollar store. And it says on there, cigarette smoking will cause cancer. Yet we don't want to get rid of cigarettes. We don't want to ban cigarettes. Why? All of our schools in this district have been built on tobacco money. Of course we're not going to. There's too much money involved. And I'm not saying this is about money, because I know there's all kinds of correlations that anybody can make. But there's so many other things that are causing health problems in our society, yet we're not addressing those. And when this hits, now all of a sudden everyone has to follow this. and everyone needs to follow the science. Yeah, we don't follow the science in a lot of other things that we have to decide on. There has to be choices in other things, even though the science says different, and it fits someone's narrative. And at some point, there has to be something done, because we can't just keep going down this road. It's too divisive. It's making small communities like ours pit themselves against each other. I mean, I've never spoken at a board meeting about this other than last year when we were going through the plan of opening our schools. I don't get on social media. It's absolutely ridiculous to me, because it's pointless, because everybody can put their opinion on there and it means absolutely nothing, because let's have a conversation. Find out who I am before you make a judgment on me. But the amount of backlash, I guess, that I have gotten on social media just because I've showed up without a mask, it doesn't bother me. But my friends are saying, Tommy, do you understand what they're calling you? I have 2 different emails. Again, it doesn't bother me. I have been called a killer because they assume that I don't wear a mask and I haven't gotten the vaccination, which I've never said if I've been vaccinated or not. So I've had 2 different people tell me I'm a killer because of what they assume of me. Luckily, I'm not an emotional person, because that could drive me to anxiety, and I'm on the ballot for re-election this November. Let me tell you, to have somebody call you a killer, that's a real easy one to say. Just scratch my name off. I don't need it. I'll go back to making cookies. So I get the emotional part of it, but at some point we have to do just the facts, and we have to understand what's best for us. I still believe that it is a personal choice. I think it's a family choice that needs to be made at the family level for what's out there. According to the CDC, and I know that people will not like this, according to the CDC, if you figure out the death rate on COVID-19, the survival rate is still at 99%. That's based on CDC numbers. I'm not getting that from anywhere else, and that was today. That was issued on the CDC to say. With a survival rate of 99%, we have turned the world upside down. And I understand that other parts of the world, that survival rate is probably a lot less. We have it the best of anybody in this country. But for our country at a 99% survival rate, we are giving up a lot for 99%. That's all I have.
Okay, let's continue. Mrs. Ray, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd like to make a reference to an article in our news messenger from our Governor DeWine. That was on the 16th. And I was listening to my colleague and talking about the pressure and the responsibility that is kind of placed on our shoulder, where I'm reading that DeWine urged school boards to require masks and expects more will enact requirements going forward. Since August 15th, over 29,000 Ohio school children have had cases of COVID-19. He also urged parents to get vaccinated and inoculate children who are under the age of 12 or older. So it's like we get really conflicting messages. Governor DeWine said, if I could change things, I would. He's our, not talking political, he's our Republican governor. He said in the past, he had one viewpoint, but looking at the situation across Ohio with our children, according to him, he is urging our boards, school boards to require masks. Also, as we speak, he's having a conversation with school boards. It just so happened he didn't know we were having a board meeting that was more important than his. but he wanted to talk and have a conversation with school board members and with the superintendents and other officials. As I said, from 7:30 to 8:30, I couldn't go listen because I'm here. But for those reasons, and also for our medical professionals, I can't dispute the medical professionals. It may, whatever we can do to keep our children safe. So if we can save, what do they say about the star, the starfish, if we can save one, if we can help our children to stay in school, whatever that could do, as we say, we're using a moving target. However, if it's going to help one, if it's going to help some of our children to stay alive, remain in school, I think it's worth an effort for us to try. We're not God, so we don't know, but we can do what we can do based on the information that we have. And based on this information from our governor that we elected, he is urging us as a school board to require masks. And this article was last, you probably have read it or you may not, but you could look at it, September 15th in our news messenger. That's it.
I would just like to share the reason why I decided to run for a school board member. I have a toddler at home. And when I was pregnant, during my pregnancy, I thought, how can I be involved in my child's education? She's not in the school district yet, but she will be soon. And I just want to be an involved parent. I want to know what's going on in the schools. I want to know her education. I want her to help her do her best when she begins school. Never did I think that I would run for school board. It's something that just came across me. Some people suggested to me, and I didn't think that was something that I would want to do. But thinking about it and looking into it, I said, maybe it is something that I want to do. Maybe that is a way to be involved. Never did I think that I would have to make this type of a decision. It's a tough decision for us up here, and it affects families and friends. There's a question, do you want to see children with masks on? I don't, but I do want to see them in the classroom. I know it was very hard for students last year doing virtual, and they were falling behind, and we didn't know what to do as a board. How do we help them? How do we catch them up? I know there was plans for the summer school, trying to help students. This year, we started school with a recommendation for masks. I agreed to that because let's try it, hoping that our children don't have to wear masks. But as the numbers are showing and all the quarantines, these are affecting the children's education. Just because they're not virtual, they're still getting behind. And I don't want to see that. I want to see the children in the classrooms. That's it.
Okay. Well, first, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. And I'd like to commend all of you for approaching this evening with a lot of class and dignity. Those of you who spoke last week and this week, you spoke very eloquently. You spoke with a purpose. None of us want to be in a situation like this. This is not what we anticipate is going to happen when we sign up for community service, which is what this is. And these decisions really weigh very heavily on all of our minds. And I know personally my hands were sweating all day today, wondering what this evening was going to be like. And you made it a very good evening because it was very educational for us. Now, I've been associated with the school district. This is my 49th year associated with the Fremont City Schools. And I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of educators, staff members, administrators, and I can safely say that in my 49 years, I have not worked with anybody who I would trust more with the welfare of your children than Mr. Detweiler. The policy we're going to be voting on gives Mr. Detweiler the authority to it's not just for masks. I mean, that's part of it. But it gives him the authority to do what he thinks is necessary to protect the health and safety of your children. And what we're asking, if we approve it, what we're asking for is that you trust Mr. Detweiler and his plan. And we all have our fingers crossed that the numbers will go down and our students can go to school. We have students who haven't been in school in 2 years. This can't go on like this. The status quo cannot continue like this. It's not working. It's not a coincidence that when school started, this is what happened. We saw it in the beginning of August when schools in other parts of the country opened. We saw it was happening. So it's not a surprise, but we have to do something, in my opinion. We have to do something differently. But again, I really am proud to be sitting here tonight with you. I'm truly proud to be in this group tonight. Because we've all seen what other school board meetings have been like in other parts of the country, other parts of the state, nearby. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like this. It wasn't pretty. And we know how emotionally charged this issue is for everybody who's sitting here tonight. So at this time, we'll have our roll call.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
No.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz?
Yes. Motion carries. At this time, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Ray,
Second.
second by Mrs. Espiritu. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbett?
Yes, motion carries. We are adjourned.